Hey folks, it's your pal Mike Shea from SlyFlourish.com and Twitter.com/SlyFlourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy D&D Prep. This is a weekly show shot 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, in which I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master while preparing for my Sunday D&D game. In this case, I am preparing for an Eberron homebrew campaign called Eberron the Second Mourning. This show is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish at patreon.com/SlyFlourish. They help support all of the bandwidth and all of the extra costs that go into making shows like this and into keeping the website up and the newsletter and everything else that goes on in the Sly Flourish empire. If you want to help support Sly Flourish, you can do so by going to patreon.com/SlyFlourish. So let's see. Yesterday, I did a video, you can see it on YouTube, where I went over Chapter 1 of Descent into Avernus. So that was a fun thing to do, or Chapter 2 of Descent into Avernus. I finished Chapter 2, and I did a video about that. But today we're going to be talking about my Eberron game. So in last week's session, I had a lot of fun with it. In the week previous, the characters were fighting their villain, Leto Skal, who is an Oni that was attempting to bring a very big, an enormous, like 3-ton Eberron shard to the Mournland. They crashed into his airship. They fought a whole ton of his lackeys. They faced off against him, and they ended up blowing out the bottom of the ship and sending the Eberron crystal down, crashing to the ground below. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to kind of use that as a big smash cut in the story and sort of start a whole new chapter of the campaign with a fresh start. And by a fresh start, I mean them waking up, bleeding and crushed against the mountainside below, having been thrown and blown off from the night sky, the airship, which is now no more, as the Eberron shard exploded and took the airship out. So they started off on a snowy cliffside, looking down upon a huge crater where the Eberron shard had crashed and exploded. They then were attacked by a bunch of weird Warforged winter wolves that had been hunting up there. And when they were just about done fighting the winter wolves, an enormous Warforged juggernaut? Titan? I think it's a Titan. A Warforged Titan Yeti attacked them. They fought the Yeti. They actually didn't have too hard a time, mostly because one of the characters has a sword that can blind people. And so he blinded it and kept it at disadvantage most of the time. And so they defeated it, and then they met another Warforged named Longspear, who was a veteran of the last war and had been hanging out with the other Warforged Juggernaut, or the Warforged Titan, to kind of, not exactly to protect the Titan, but to keep him out of trouble and to help protect other people from the Titan, which he didn't do a particularly good job on. So the idea was that Longspear, who is a humanoid Warforged and has full cognitive ability, had kind of, during the war, had been partnered up with a bunch of like Warforged Warforged that didn't quite have the same cognitive capabilities that a Warforged humanoid did during the war. And after the war, they were kind of discarded. And he's like, well, this Warforged Titan is just going to kill people if we leave him. So why not? And the Warforged Titan would sort of follow him. So he took him up into the mountains and said, he'll be safe up here. And maybe he'll find peace once again. And he was always tormented. Like the Warforged Juggernaut never found peace. And so when the characters killed the Juggernaut, Longspear was like, I mourn for my friend, but he finally found a peace that he never was able to find. And I guess it was inevitable anyway. So it was kind of a sad story, but it's fun. You know, it was kind of a neat story about the last war and the veterans of the last war. And here's this, fur-covered Warforged with a big long spear who hangs out hunting in the woods, and happens to be sitting on a bunch of caves, a bunch of ancient Dakani ruined caves, right along. And so they're trying to figure out, like, well, where the hell are we? Like, we blew up. We don't even know where we are. And they found their location. Let me pull it up on a map. Hello, Mom. Mom is here. So they found themselves on the Seawall Mountains, and they couldn't exactly figure out. They figured out that they are south of Margol Pass. And so they're in the territory of Dargoon. And they're like, So they spend a fair bit of time like looking at the map and figure out like, well, where do we want to go? And they know that Leto's Skull had been heading towards Eston on the edge of the Mournland. And so they kind of put their name around Arldusk. They said, we want to kind of head to Arldusk. And they're like, well, I don't know how long this is, right? So 1,000 miles is whatever, that distance. So how far? It sure be nice if maybe there's a map somewhere that can tell you like a distance between places. But it looks pretty far, right? From Arldusk to, from there to Arldusk is probably closing in on 1,000 miles. Which is like, I don't know, 100 days of travel. I forget what's the travel distance, normal travel distance in D&D. Somewhere, I'm sure that is 24 miles a day. Travel. I'm sure you're right, but I just want to know where I can find it. Travel. Rise in the Last War. No. Dungeon Masters got planar travel. No. Travel Pace, Ghost of Saltmarsh. No. I'm looking for just this stuff. I wish you could search individual books. I guess you can do core books. Can you do core? You can search compendium, I guess. Yeah, so 24 miles a day by foot. So it would take them, what is that then? 1,000 miles, 250, is that 200? No, it's 25 days? Is that right? 25 times 25? No, that's not right. How many, somebody do some math for me. How long would it take them to travel 1,000 miles? 40 days? Yeah, 41 days. So that's it's a long time, right? It's a long time for them to go tramping around the nation side. Now it might be kind of cool because there's a lot to see between, you get to see some Dargoon, you get to see some, I believe this is Zalargo territory. So yeah, they're down here. They're down, see where it says Zalargo, they're kind of around there. So they would see some Dargoon, they'd see some Zalargo. I can't tell what region. I guess that's considered Mournland. There's this large region that doesn't have a name for it, but below Thrain, which I presume is the Mournland, and I guess like that big gray patch is where the actual destruction is concerned. But I don't know, like is that I can't tell. Is that Thrain? So they get to travel through a lot of like regions, right? And that might be kind of interesting because they sort of get the culture of these different regions as they're traveling through. Is that New Sire? I know New Sire is there. I'm lost. I zoomed and now I'm lost. Yeah, so New Sire is right in the edge of Breland, right? And so they're right there, but I don't think they call that region New Sire. So I don't know what it is. New Sire I thought was like a city. So I'm not sure. But it could be interesting for them to travel. The other option for travel is they could go down into Khyber below and try to make their way through Khyber. And that can be an option too. I'm not sure. So the hard part is I really wish I had asked them to make a choice about what direction they were going to go and how they were going to do it so that I could kind of prepare for that. But I didn't. And now we're still kind of down there. So I might either have to prepare a couple different things, a couple different options, like what happens if they go down and through Khyber and what happens if they take overland. Or I'll have to railroad them down one of those paths, depending if I think one of those paths is a lot cooler. Face the long dark of Moria, exactly. So both of those could be potentially interesting. So let's start our prep. So Over on the left, we have, as we do always, my Notion notebook for keeping track of my campaign. If you want to have a copy of your own version of this Notion campaign, you can do so by starting up your own Notion notebook and using the URL, which I just pasted in the Twitch chat, and it's also in the links down below in the YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. So this is Notion. So if somebody would do the honor over the next 40 minutes or so of every time somebody asks me what tool I'm using to remind them that I'm using Notion, please do so, because throughout a lot of people are doing it. D&D Designers Pod says, I've started using Notion because of your video. It's so helpful. Yeah, it's not so good that I'm scared, but I worry about kind of pushing any one particular tool, right? Like I think you can do a lot with a lot of different tools. I found it to be pretty useful. I find it to be relatively transparent to use. There's definitely some bits that I don't like. I don't like that it does not have an offline mode. It does have an export mode, but the export mode isn't great. And not having an offline mode is a pretty big deal. So that's one thing that like OneNote, which is sort of I would consider to be a parallel to this. That, probably OneNote is more popular, and OneNote has an offline mode, which I think is a big deal, but you can't export from OneNote, so you're stuck with OneNote forever. So it's, hard to deal with. But since my games are all online anyway, it has not been a problem for me to have my notes online, but I do worry about that. However, boy, it's really nice. So we are going to duplicate my session planning template and drag it to the top. And we open that, and we change the name of this thing to 9 August 2020, Sunday, Eberron. All right, so that is our first step. Next, we are going to review our characters. So let's take a look at who we've got. This is the Sunday characters. Our Sunday characters... We have Zarentir Delander. I think the player is out this week. So we're not going to worry too much about Zarentir this week. We have Saber. I have an interesting idea about how to incorporate Saber into the adventure. So Saber is a shifter monk of the Four Winds and follower of Balinor, one of the what are they called? The good guy gods. A bounty hunter. Shift is a Warforged, one of the first Warforged, powered by a Kyber crystal, and one of the two Warforged that were originally built as a joint experiment between the nation of Karnath and House Kenneth as one of the first Warforged. Shane Husk is a novelist. He wrote about the Mourning. He's a Hobgoblin wizard, and he's got a bunch of best-selling schlocky books that he sells, and he's on the adventure to write down what happens. Banner is a follower of the Becoming God, another Warforged veteran of the last war, and Arwen Chi Zizu is a dragon marked member. I think is she dragon marked? She is a she has a latent House Sifis dragon mark. And she is the possessor of the double dodecahedron that is the compass to find Claw Rift, which is in the city of it's in the Glass Plateau in the city of Metrol. Kind of a big conclusion of where things are going to go. So those are our characters today. I think I've got 5 players coming today. So there we go. Go back to our notes. Characters are reviewed. You will note that the session notes here follow the outline of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. That's what we do here. So strong start. So where can we start? They ended the game at the crater edge. They just brought on board a member of House Tarkanon. And in fact, so when I'm doing my notes, I tend to skip around a little bit as I'm thinking. And that's perfectly, not that you need anyone's permission for anything. There's a way to make these smaller, right? I thought there was a way to make these smaller. So I have the full width. Properties, card size, make them small. There we go. That fits better. So Night Valley. Night Valley is a House Tarkanon assassin that they found on the edge of the crater and recruited and said, hey, we'd like you to join. Why don't you come along with us and you can help figure out where to go. And she was the one that said, yeah, I know that Leto Skull was headed to Eston. And so that's what got the characters interested in going to Eston, because they think Eston might be the next step to get to wherever they're going. So, I started the last adventure with a big battle. I think this time maybe some hobgoblins. I think some hobgoblins of Drew. What's the region called? Our maps here. Let me look at my map. Dargoon, right? So one of the things about their, Dargoon hobgoblins. So Dargoon hobgoblins come to investigate the crash. One of the secrets and clues, I was just reading up about Dargoon. Let's do a little searchy. And Dargoon is an interesting empire. It is a signatory of the Treaty of Thronehold. And it is currently being ruled by, where is it here? Is this Rising the Last War? Yeah, they gave up. Dargoon is, Leshk, Hawk, Haruk, Shurat Kor. Loose rulership, is that a word? It is now. And there are bands of bugbears roam the so where's the there's a thing about, I saw a thing about bugbears here. The Margul. So that could be kind of interesting. You look like an NPC with a stat block. Yes. So I think that our strong start is that Dargoon soldiers of Leshk, this guy. I'm gonna be typing that around. Dargoon Hobgoblin. Goblinoid? Goblinoid. Come to investigate the crash. I think that that's kind of a fun, this could be sort of a fun thing where they're there with Longspear. They're at it. They see this group, they're kind of, they see like a goblin scout, right, with his mask on and kind of like standing there tattooed up, right? And then like this, group of hobgoblins, maybe they come riding in on horses, right? What would hobgoblins ride? Do hobgoblins ride things? Hobgoblin Mounts. Let's take a look at the monster manual. Sources, source book, monster manual. I don't know if it'll say. I know that like goblins ride wargs, right? Hobgoblins. So probably wargs. Axe beaks. Axe beaks would be pretty awesome. Long history of training animals, like like more civilized races, they use oxen and horses to transport goods and weaponry. They communicate with others just to keep vicious wolves to guard prisoners. Cavalry use trained wargs as steeds. Look at me looking up at the monster manual. Wargs. Let's look at wargs. Yeah, wargs. Bugbears riding bears. So yeah, I don't know that I'm going to bring the bugbears in because I have an idea for bugbears. So yeah, let's say how many would be? Probably a dozen, right? Okay, so let's have a little Sly Flourish lesson. And remember, all of my advice comes with recognition that advice is BS and that you should use whatever works for you in your game. But sharing, how about a Sly Flourish sharing of experiences? So in my experience, a fun way to plan out scenes and situations like this isn't to think about like, what's the right balance, right? Like how many hobgoblins is the right balance for 5 7th level characters? Instead, you say, what makes sense given the story and the situation? And the story and the situation is a bunch of hobgoblins are coming to investigate the crash. These are hobgoblin loyalists to Lesh Haruk Sharatkor. So how many would they have like in a party, right? How many would explore? Is it, I mean, like 50 is like a small army. So it's not 50. And it's probably not 5 because that's like a small, tiny scouting party. It's probably bigger than that. So I would say like a dozen to 14, right? If this is a group that has taken a few days to go out there, they don't know what's out there. So they probably want to send enough to be able to handle it. So it's really a question of like how many make sense, right? From regardless of the character, nothing to do with what the characters are, right? We have a very interesting dichotomy, very interesting two sides of our brain that we have to consider. One is, while we're planning on our game, we should have the characters firmly in mind because the story is about them. They're the story that takes place at the game, right? Their story is the one we're telling. I made a tweet yesterday. I make a tweet every day, right? I do a D&D tip every day, and I actually have them pushed out about a month and a half. So the D&D tip that got posted yesterday, I wrote a month and a half ago, and I write a bunch of them. I come up with 7 a week, and I sit there on my phone and I put them into a system that pushes them out for later. And I never know which one's going to be good. But man, some of them get a lot of traction. And the one that got a lot of traction yesterday, which is relevant to this conversation, was, let's go to my tweets. So I can go to my notifications because everybody and their brother replied. The DM doesn't tell the story. The DM facilitates the story that happens at the table. Right. And people dug it. I got 212 retweets, 1.2 thousand, 1,200 likes. It moved all over the place. It got how many replies? A butt ton of replies. I got people that were like, most people are like, yeah, I got a lot of like, yeah, this, right? And then I got some people are like, well, actually, which is fine. Like we all got opinions, right? And I'm not knocking anybody. That one resonated, and I believe that one, right? And the point is that like the story is what happens at the table. We're facilitating that story. When we're facilitating that story, we have to keep our head in 2 places. One, focusing on the characters. The story is about the characters, right? So we think about the characters first before we do anything else. But then a lot of the world building, and I use that term loosely because I'm not big into building worlds, but a lot of the situation building is about what would the situation be like if the characters weren't there. They actually don't affect the situation. When the commander of, the Lesh Haruk Sharatkor's Western commander saw the explosion over the Shield Mountains and said, oh my God, we got to figure out what the hell that is, right? He doesn't think about, I bet there's 5 7th level characters out there. I should send the level appropriate number of hobgoblins. No, he says I should send out a group that can move quickly and could go figure out what's going on. I probably need more than a few scouts because it's pretty far away and I don't know how dangerous it is. So I need to think about how many hobgoblins I should probably send out there. And he's probably like, I'll probably send a commander and probably a dozen soldiers and maybe 6 scouts, right? And that, that sounds right. This is a really long-winded way of getting around to it, right? But the answer is like, when we go down to our monsters, we have, we have a Hobgoblin commander, 12 hobgoblins, 6 scouts, and they all need. So the scouts probably ride wolves. They probably don't get full wargs, right? Oh, they might all have wargs. So that's 18, 19 wargs. So that's pretty good. For funsies, let's do Hobgoblin, because there's a bunch of hobgoblins. There's a bunch of other hobgoblins, right? So Iron Shadow. I don't think we're gonna, probably didn't send any Iron Shadow. Those are probably like assassins and protectors. I think they are assassins and protectors. Devastators, I think, are mages, right? Yeah. So I think he probably sent a Devastator along with the group. And that would make an even 20, right? The Devastator is like a Hobgoblin mage, which is cool because they could like look at Shane Husk and be like, in fact, Shane Husk is using the same icon as the Devastator's using. So that would be pretty cool. So that's because they are, it's very likely arcane. So that's probably their sage. And I think it's a Hobgoblin captain. Yeah, the Hobgoblin captain's probably who's leading the party, right? So now we've got our Hobgoblin party, right? It's 20 of them come pouring away. Like, that's a war party, right? Like, Evil John's like, yeah, you got a captain, a Devastator, 12 Hobgoblins, 6 scouts. The scouts go on ahead. They're kind of fanning out. They're probably running on, and they got like daggers. I'll probably use the scout stat block instead of the goblin stat block for these guys because the scouts, the scouts will work. And and they kind of come over the hill. I think that's going to be a fantastic, fun, strong start, right? That'd be a good time. And the answer is, it's probably not a fight. Like, this isn't a battle. I don't know what my group will do, but I have a feeling Longskeer is going to be like, they're holding the battle standard. Like the party might kind of freak out a little bit. The Tarkanon assassin's going to freak out a little bit. Like, who are these? But he's like, I think these are the Lashks guys. We probably want to talk to them. So it's very likely to be like this is like a crucial conversation. This is like this is going to be a stressful conversation. Probably not a fight. And if it is a fight, the characters will win, right? Even though there's 40 people in this fight, they'll still win. 40 if you include the wargs and stuff. And it could end up that way. And then it'd be like, man, it could be really bad. Designing an encounter this way means your players should never assume that they can always attack everything. That is correct. It's not always level appropriate. That's right. Now, another thought I've had is that the idea of the sort of the power series of challenge rating and the logarithmic power series of challenge rating to the number of the threat that you face. That's a really nerdy thing to say. The idea is the higher the challenge rating, the fewer of them you're going to find in the world. Which means, you're not going to see a whole army of CR 12 monsters out there. There's not like an army of bone claws, right? There's like 2 bone claws. There are armies of skeletons because they're tiny, right? So you take the challenge rating, the logarithmic number of the challenge rating is about, the number of people that would be that nerdy but precise. Yeah. Bye, RSR70. Thanks for coming. That means there's a lot of hobgoblins, but there's not as many devastators. There's not as many captains, right? There's a lot of goblin scouts, but you don't need that many. But what that also means is that if you think about it, the number, when your characters are getting higher level unless they go to areas that are filled with really dangerous things. So like there are areas in the multiverse where that doesn't hold up. And the example would be in hell. If you go to hell, you're going to face a lot of high challenge rating monsters. But if you're not in hell and you're just going around the normal world, you're not going to run into a lot of people that are high challenge rating, which means the characters are not going to always, they're more likely to run into groups that are lower challenge rating than they are. The higher level they get. So as the characters get higher level, it's more appropriate. It fits the world, usually, a little bit more for them to face battles that are weaker, right? It's not uncommon for them to face a couple scouts. And they can kill a couple scouts easily. And maybe they do, and maybe they don't, right? So when we think about like how many monsters are there, it's the instinct is to constantly pull out your Kobold Fight Club or your Encounter Builder in D&D Beyond and make things challenge appropriate. And I've seen some just ham-fisted encounters and adventures where you're like, why did this occur? My favorite example is we were playing in a tier 2 Adventurers League adventure. And I think it was like an epic. And the city was in a battle, and we were running down a street, and we saw a bunch of people breaking into a dress shop to steal dresses while the guards were all busy with other things. And we were like 7th and 8th level. And then we had a conversation, and they said, well, you're not the cops. And we're like, yeah, but we're not going to let you rob that dress shop. I guess we cared. And so we got into a fight, and it was like 4 swashbucklers and 3 bandit captains. And I stopped and I'm like, why are a bunch of swashbucklers and bandit captains robbing a dress shop? And the DM looked at me and said, well, it's what's appropriate for the challenge level. And I'm like, that is so lame. Like that should have been, 6 bandits. And the fact that bandits are CR 1/4 and the fact that we're challenge rating, we're all level 8 and that with one spell will take them all out doesn't matter because dress shops would get robbed by bandits, not by 3 swashbucklers and 2 bandits. What are 2 bandit captains doing hanging out with each other? How many bandit captains do you need for 3 swashbucklers? Like, talk about too much middle management. So this doesn't make sense. Now, another example, so I don't remember the name of the adventure, and if I knew it, I wouldn't say it, and if I knew who wrote it, I wouldn't say it either. And Adventurers League had this problem because they had like a number of appropriate encounters at certain challenge ratings that you had to meet in order to get leveling, and that sucked. So yeah, the swashbucklers should be stealing the crown jewels. Exactly right. Like appropriate challenge for the appropriate thing. Now, a perfect example of the other one is James Intercasso's Invasion of the Planet of the Tarrasques, which, by the way, I don't know if you can still get it for free, but you could have gotten it for free for signing up for James Intercasso's newsletter, which I would recommend. He's an awesome dude and he makes awesome stuff. And he was giving away 3 adventures for free. One of which was my favorite high-level adventure I've ever played. I never ran it. Called Invasion of the Planet of the Tarrasques. That was free this weekend, Evil John says, yeah. And Invasion of the Planet of the Tarrasques, talk about like not caring about challenge rating. In one part, you literally face 100 Tarrasques, probably not all at once. You face like 2 or 3 at a time. But there's a planet of the Tarrasques. It goes on. There's a lot of Tarrasques on the planet. I think you face more than one Tarrasque that gets through the gate and starts fighting against Waterdeep. And at one point during the fight against the Tarrasque, a bunch of bandits break into a shop nearby, and they're just bandits, right? And like, and my favorite moment ever, which I stole from the TV show Deadwood. My favorite moment was I just killed a Tarrasque. I power attacked it and did all this stuff, and I got the killing blow against the Tarrasque. And James was kind enough to let me behead the Tarrasque because it was already a killing blow. And I climb, I'm naked because I realized that wearing armor against a Tarrasque was a completely ridiculous notion because it hits on a 2. So I took off all my armor. So I'm standing there in my small clothes, standing on the head of Tarrasque with this huge bleeding sword. I'm covered in Tarrasque gore, and these dudes are breaking into this shop. And I'm like, you there! Stop breaking into that shop. I'm watching you. And they're like, and I made like an intimidation check with advantage because I was standing on a Tarrasque head. And that's when advantage should stack. And I made the check, and they're like, okay. And they ran away. I'm like, that's such a brilliant, like, little bit of flavor. So yes, long-winded way of saying, build your encounters around what makes sense for the story first. And then you should use a benchmark to say, is it deadly or not? Now, when I'm running 40 guys, I'm pretty sure I don't need to use the encounter builder to tell me that's probably on the side of deadly just by action economy alone, especially if you throw a Devastator and a Hobgoblin Captain in there. So I'm not even going to bother checking, but that's what makes sense. And it makes sense to me. It's also likely to be a conversation, so I don't need to worry about it. I need to take a breath. So that's going to be our strong start. Then I think our next scene is going to be Long Road or Delve into Khyber. And that's a big decision point, right? Like, which direction are they going to go? Where are they going? And how are they going to get there? And I tell you, I sure wish I had figured that out last game, because the idea that we have to figure that out now leaves me at a pretty big disadvantage when I think about what we're going to do. But I have a thought for overland stuff. So Ignatius says, if it's deadly, shouldn't you decide how to allow the party to lose without dying? Hook it into another scene or situation. Yes. If you think it's going to be deadly. So I'll be honest, like the encounter balance math tells me that a Hobgoblin Captain, a Devastator, 12 Hobgoblins, 6 Goblin Scouts, and 20 Wargs is probably considered deadly. My characters will eat that up because like 2 Fireballs is going to get rid of most of that, right? Like it's not going to be, that's not really deadly. It's mathematically, according to CR guidelines, deadly. I don't know what it is if I do so the 5 characters, if I do the Mike Shea, Sly Flourish approved rule of thumb, which is half the level of the characters, half the sum total of the character levels. So I have 7 times 5 is what? The math is hard. 35? That sounds like 35. Half of 35, half of 34 is, what is that math? Math is hard. 18? 18 challenge rating. The Wargs are 10 because they're CR 1/2, I think. I think the Hobgoblins, yeah. So it's going to be over, right? It's going to blow past that too. So either, however you do the math, it's going to blow past the side. But it makes sense. So yeah, what if they lose? Well, if they lose, you're right. You ideally want to have something where you fail forward. You want to have a general idea, especially if you think a batter is going to be deadly, on how to fail forward. Like, do they get captured? Do they escape? Do they wait? Does one of them have 1 hit point left? I've done that before. It's always nice to kind of in the back of your mind, what happens if they lose? How can they still move forward? So I think that could work. Put into characters in even a worse situation than having been dead. Usually be captured. In this case, they'd be taken they'd probably be taken inland as prisoners and then questioned about why they caused this great big explosion. Then they have to negotiate their way out of that. So failing forward is a thing. Yeah, sorry, I didn't make a failing forward. Failing forward is a RPG concept that has been around for a while, which is the idea that when people fail, it's actually one of the reasons why the Powered by the Apocalypse RPG puts such an emphasis on success with a cost. Is that's essentially a fail forward mechanic, that you're more likely, success with a cost is a more interesting story element than success. And I think that's kind of neat. I'm not getting any further to figuring out today's thing. So they have 2 possible paths. If they take the long road, I am thinking about, let's go back to the map. And boy, I think I kind of want them to do this, but we'll see. That they make their way through the Margot Pass, probably at the Gal River. I want to have a small Goblin Town. Let's go to the links. Let's go find a name for this town. Names. Fire Spur. That sounds good. Fire Spur. And where was that? I had the map. Fire Spur at the Gaul River, right? And I think I'm going to do, if they go to Fire Spur, I'm probably going to throw in a Seven Samurai adventure here. In this case, goblins are soon to be attacked by an army of Margul bugbears, and ask the characters to help. The interesting thing about Fire Spur is that it has these burning trees. That their roots touch down into lava lakes below. So when we think about so what's a Seven Samurai adventure? A Seven Samurai, if we go to our good old Sly Flourish website, I kind of believe that the Seven Samurai adventure is a nearly perfect D&D adventure. The idea behind, Seven Samurai is a movie made by director Akira Kurosawa a long time ago. The Magnificent Seven is based on it, but also there's lots and lots and lots of times. There was actually one of the episodes of Mandalorian was based on it very clearly. And it's a very simple story. Look at that. The picture is just awesome. It's a very simple story, the kind of story we don't have in movies anymore because producers like to make things complicated. But the simple story is that a village that's pretty poor is getting attacked by bandits soon. They know that they know that they're going to soon get attacked by bandits. And they want to hire a bunch of mercenaries, a bunch of Ronin I guess they're Ronin. They seem to be Ronin. They want to hire a bunch of Ronin to come and protect them from the bandits. So very, very simple thing, right? Village hires mercenaries to protect them from marauders. Evil John, and Three Amigos is also all my Seven Samurai games turn into the Three Amigos. And there are so it's a great model. And for the model, we have a set of questions. These 6 questions that make it unique and interesting among Seven Samurai adventures, which means you can use this model again and again. So the villagers in this case are goblin farmers, right? They're peaceful goblin farmers. Maybe they make coal? So maybe they're goblin coal miners. Because of the burning trees and the lava lake underneath. Coal and obsidian. Who are the bandits? The bandits are Margul bugbears. We know what that is. What makes the village fantastic? It has these burning trees that along the river routes that touch lava lakes below. What makes the bandit hideout fantastic? So that's a good one. What's interesting about this bandit hideout? Where are the bandits hanging out? And I think for this, we're going to use so I'm going to give a sneak peek at a Patreon. So I'm trying to offer more stuff to my Patreon patrons. And one of the things that I put together is a thing called adventure generators. These are nicely formatted adventure generators that you can use to build your own adventures. And shocker, one of them is called Seven Swords. And it's about this very thing. But for the location, I'm going to use a different one called Adventures for Hire. And we're going to get out my dice and pop it open and get my D20, I guess it is. So the location is going to be 17, a menagerie. That's a little weird. That's kind of, I'm getting an idea from that. Maybe the bugbears maintain a menagerie, right? They've got their, they love their, they have, they have all these strange monsters. You know, it's like a menagerie slash hunting, hunting lodge. And maybe there's a particular creature, and this can actually get into one of the other questions. So if we go back to our Seven Samurai list, one of the questions is, what dark secret did the villagers hide? So what creature do the bugbears have? A dragon egg. They have a red dragon egg. And it just hatched into a wormling. And it's the dragon down in the caves below Fire Spur that keeps the coal made, right? Like it's the, you have trees and everything that are growing. I don't know if this makes sense, but they have trees and stuff that are growing. The trees grow into the thing. The dragon keeps everything hot down there. Like their lair effect is they keep it in effect. But bugbears want to come, and they know that the dragon egg needs to hatch before the bugbears will come and take it. But they don't want to take it because the goblins will all be destitute if they do that. And that answers the other question. Why haven't the bandits attacked already? They haven't attacked because they're waiting for the egg to hatch. Right? So, so we answered our 6 questions, right? And if you think about it, like I'm pretty ready to go, right? I probably need a couple of maps. So we have the long road. We have travel. Now, I guess I have a dirty trick, which is whether they go through Khyber or they go overland, I can just move Fire Spur, right? I can just make it an underground village. It doesn't need to be above ground. It can be a place, and it still makes sense that the goblins are there. So, so that's definitely a possibility. What was I? Oh, maps. I need maps. For maps, we go to our good pal Dyson. DysonLogos.com, DysonLogos.blog. An awesome, probably, maybe the best, most useful D&D website, because it's got how many maps here? 856 maps. So I need 2 things. I need 2 maps. I need the Bugbears Menagerie, and I need the Goblins Town. So we're going to do some scrolling through here. And we're going to look for the Menagerie. That's pretty good. But I think I used that before. They'd recognize it. I shouldn't keep using the same maps. We're going to jump down a little ways because I keep using the same maps. That's good. Look, see right there. This is a cool map. The Falcon's Rest. Open that thing. And open that map. There we've got so we're going to save that image to the desktop. And we'll go to our locations. And we will have to scroll over to get to the new button. The Bugbear Menagerie. Upload an image. Choose. Go to my desktop. It uploads it, and we've got our menagerie. So now, go back to our notes, and we go to our locations. And we type menagerie. Oh, why is it freezing? Sometimes sometimes it needs a rest. Bugbear Menagerie. Cool. But I also need the Goblin. Well, there's one. Drowning Point. Right above it. Isn't that great? That looks fine. We don't need much. Is it great? It's not great. It's kind of a boring village, but it'll do. And maybe the idea is like there's a lava river that flows through here and then hits the water and it turns into obsidian, and that's how they mine their obsidian. So we can make it kind of cool, and the trees are fiery. So that could be cool. That's pretty fantastic. And the name of that place is Fire Spur. So we'll go back here and we go to locations. Scroll over again. Get to the new button. Well, just in case I forget the name, but I happen to remember Goblin Village. Upload an image. And I've got a map. So I got 2 maps ready to go. We go down here and we say Fire Spur. Didn't work again. It's freezing. For some reason, I'm going too quick. Gets tired. Notion gets tired. So I've got my locations. Very cool. I'm burning hot, right? So I think the cool bit is I love this idea, right? I think this is a really cool scene. I think it'll be a good couple of sessions to deal with. I love throwing Seven Samurai stuff in the middle of an adventure. I love that it's like a side quest, right? It's like, it's not necessarily a part of the main storyline, which is a bigger problem that I really need to figure out. It's a bigger problem that I need to figure out. Which is where the hell the story is going from here. But this gives me a couple sessions, which I think the players will love, right? I think it's fun. I think it's kind of a fun break from the whole thing with Leto Skull and everything going on there. It's a good way to go. So I'm going to do that. So what secrets do we have? I think this is a particular group of bugbears, right? The Margul. Called the what? I guess I need another name for collector. Rainbow Teeth. Rainbow Teeth? No. They have different. What's a good name for this band? The Red Hand. Oh, no, there's a Red Hand already, right? We'll go with, Black Claw. Go with, it's original. Has of monsters that they covet. The goblins of Fire Spur owe their riches, owe their livelihood. The dragon lair beneath the town. The goblins mine coal, but their real profit comes from obsidian weapons. The goblins have a goblin egg, have a dragon egg about to hatch in 3 days. What other? A Kyber gateway exists beneath Fire Spur that leads into northern Zalargo. Kyber Gateway exists that beneath Fire Spur leads to northern Zalargo. That kind of gave them a sort of a jump in distance. What other? The Haruk loyal hobgoblins do not approve of the Black Claw. The Black Claw Menagerie. The menagerie houses lots of strange monsters. One last secret for Fire Spur and everything going on there. The goblins have treated with the gnomes of Zilargo outside of the taxes of Haruk. Some politics. So all those secrets are around Fire Spur. I think Fire Spur is going to be the thing. Like it's what I've got, and whatever direction they head, they're running into Fire Spur. So I think that will work. So I've got my travel along the long road. We can do a montage. There's a lot of different ways to do montages for travel. Like name something, if somebody wants to name something that happened or that their character did along the journey, and an obstacle that they ran into and how they overcame it. That's pretty good. We also have Long Claw or Long Spear. Long Spear's there. Monsters. We have bugbears. Maybe hill giants. Maybe bugbears and hill giants could be together. What else? All the monsters. Chimera. Wyvern. What other creatures might they have in their menagerie? I don't know. I can figure those out. So I think that's fine. And treasure. Some obsidian weapons. Obsidian weapons, armor, and gear, which are particularly strong, right? Super strong weapons, armor, and gear might be pretty cool. So with 2 minutes remaining, I think I've got enough of an adventure. Let me take a look at what's going on in the chat. If it's an player versus an army of low-level monsters, they're fairly easy way. The mob calculator, yeah. Gondalar, about handling. How hard is it to run combat with entire armies like seven samurai, or do you just roleplay it? I actually put up a new article. So there's a couple ways to handle it, but I have a new way that I like, which is running hordes. Running hordes, the lazy way to run lots of D&D monsters. And so you can use the mob calculator if you want, but I tend to go with the 1/4 succeed, or use a rough estimate of 1/4 succeed as a general rule of thumb. So pool the damage that they take and remove monsters as they take enough damage to remove a monster. That's number one. Then number two is anytime the bad guys would make a saving throw or make an attack, and assuming they don't have advantage or disadvantage, 1/4 of them succeed. If it's more than that, if they have advantage, it's half, right? And then you can tune that number up and down. So you can round up if you think that they have they're likely to hit somebody, or round down if you think they're not. And if somebody uses something like shield, if they say I want a shield, then you say, okay, instead of 1/4, it's 1 in 10, right? So tweak the amount. You can just in your head just roll on a scale up and down of how many are likely to succeed, and you're going to be pretty close to the math anyway. So that works out. So I like, that's what I would run with hordes, is the two things. One, pool the damage the horde takes, and two, so I've got a tricky bit here, which is the wargs and the goblins are two different. There's a lot of wargs and a lot of goblins, right? And how do you manage both of those? And what you don't want to do is mix up monster types. So I would probably just use the same stat block and reskin them and then have the give the equal amount of hit points to both wargs and hobgoblins. Treat them like one generic monster, and then pull that many out. I think that will work better. What else we got? Wow, a lot of people today. 71 people in the chat. Thank you. I'm just going to answer some questions, and we're calling it a day. Players vs. Army, low-level monsters, and mob calculator, but I like now I like my horde rules better. If they've got them in average, very cool mounts. Yeah, it could have some cool mounts. What are the adventure generator? Where is the adventure generator from? This looks great in a bind. Yes, I actually use the adventure generator. It is a patron. It is a benefit of joining my Patreon feed. I actually just put it up this morning at like 5 in the morning. If you go to patreon.com/slyflourish, this is the, I should just view the public page. You can support Sly Flourish for $2 a month. The URL is in there. And the first post, for those of you who are patrons, we have there is a pinned post. Where the heck is the pinned post? You'd think it would be pinned at the top. Oh, I think it's not pinned because in this case I'm viewing it from commercial from the other side. But if you go to the pinned post, I'll show you the post here. So this is a published post, and I'll link it so that you can get to it. There is now a landing page. You will only be able to read that page if you are a patron. But if you are a patron, this gives you links to Regnum Ratus, the Rats in the Cellar, which is a adventure for levels 1 to 5. It's all about traveling in weird catacombs beneath a tavern and fighting giant rats. Nice, cool adventure. It's an exclusive adventure. It's even got a random table list at the end for generating your own encounters and locations underneath. Cavern locations, cavern encounters, because I love lists like that. That's a thing. You get the Sly Flourish Adventure Generator, right, which I talked about. Adventures for Hire, 7 Swords, and our Arena of Fate are 3 of the adventure generators. And you get access to a exclusive channel on my Discord server. You also get not only the Notion template that I share here, you get access to all of the notebooks I've got. My Eberron Second Mourning notebook and my Mournland one-on-one notebook that I do with my wife, and my Descent in Avarice notebook. So you get access to all of those as well. So that's all of the rewards that you get for helping to support the Empire. Your support of the Empire is really because you like what I do. These are gifts that you get for supporting it. So you shouldn't think of them as you're buying these things. You should think of it as like you want to help the site out. But those are some exclusive things. And the adventure generators, yeah, like I have used that now for a while. So I think that is it. I think we've got enough of an adventure going today. It's going to be a little bit improv-y, but I think if I can get them to fire spur, I think everything will be fine. So that will be good. I guess the only last thing, and on YouTube, I don't know how useful this will be, depending if it's still going. In an hour, my friends over at Dwarven Forge are going to be launching their new Kickstarter for their latest Dwarven Forge sets. If you want to get it, for me, it's like a model train hobby, right? It's a side hobby for me for D&D, but I love it. If you are into 3D tabletop terrain, this is the best 3D tabletop terrain you can get. It's really, really great stuff. It's costly. I won't kid you. It ain't cheap. But like a model train set, it's kind of a fun thing to experiment with. Some people do it. It doesn't necessarily make your games like significantly better because, games are all about the stories that you tell with your friends, but it's a fun table accessory to have. And I dig it. And I'm a fan. I buy it every year. I go in and buy a fair bit for their Kickstarter. So if you're into that sort of thing, their Kickstarter is launching in an hour. I'm actually going to be hanging out in their Twitch channel, on the pre-show in a half hour where we talk about it. And I actually pushed my game back to 12:30 so that I could actually see the Kickstarter launch and back it as fast as possible. And then I'll run my game after that. So that's kind of a neat thing. It is funny, like it's a little hard to think about Dwarven Forge in a pandemic because like our friends aren't coming over. But I did run a Dwarven Forge setup online for my Wednesday D&D game by setting up a phone with a tripod and a second Discord account, and then put a video feed up so that the players could see, as though it was another player, the players could focus on that one and see where all the characters were and move them around and stuff like that. And that worked pretty well. So it was, for my friends who normally came over to my house and saw my Dwarven Forge stuff, it was fun for them to see the Dwarven Forge stuff. Otherwise, it was a fun thing to do. I don't think I'm going to do it all the time, but it was a fun thing. It was a fun thing to do. So I will say, again, it is not, it doesn't double the joy of your game, right? It looks great, and everybody looks at it, it's like, oh man, I wish I could play with it that way. And it's fun stuff to play with. A good game comes from working with your players to share a good story, right? That's where good games come from. It does not come from accessories, but accessories are fun, right? And like a model train set, it's a fun thing to have. So noon Eastern, yes, yeah, noon, yeah, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 hour from now. So. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I appreciate everybody for showing up. And if you enjoyed this video, please check out the other Sly Flourish Lazy DM Prep videos. There's a whole bunch of them now, like 100 of them. And come and hang out during one of the Sunday morning streams. Thank you all very much. Have a great day, and get out there and play some D&D.